A head-spinning morning for news, lots going on, but the papers have more or less decided what the main story is. There's the Sunday Telegraph. Corrupt Russians face UK visa ban, suggesting the Magnitsky Act, which is a tough American-Canadian act against misbehaving Russians, is going to be applied in Britain. There's the Sunday Times got a different take on the story. They're talking about all the Russians who've been paying large amounts of money into the Conservative Party's coffers. Marina Litvinenko, who's going to be on the programme shortly, has been talking about that story as well. The Mail on Sunday has gone on another charity scandal story, this time Bono's charity One. And then, interesting, I keep attacking the red tops in this programme for not doing serious stories on the front page. Lots and lots of people with their clothes off instead. But, so, shout out to the Sunday people. 8 targets on Putin's UK hit list. They have identified another 8, mainly Russian people, who they think are going to be next. This is the beginning of the story, not the end. And there's the Sunday Express. Spy poison was in a parcel, they say. Was it in Zizi? Was it in a parcel? Was it in flowers? We'll talk about that much more. And then there's the Observer, following International Women's Day, have a story about top-paid men outstripping women by 4 to 1. Shock figures reveal. Not Carrie Gracie, but an actor on the front page of the story for once. OK, you are beautifully coordinated. Thank you very much. This is Tangerine Dream. Tangerine Dream. But we're going to start off with the Russian story.
Yes, Andrew, look, it's... Every paper seems to have a different take on this. As you said, in the People, they've got a former Russian spy who says that the Russians tried to poison him. He's all over the People with these other spies that he says are on the hit list. They say it was in the restaurant. The poison was in the restaurant. The Sunday Express says the poison was in a parcel that was sent to his home. The Mail on Sunday says it was in the flowers by the grave. So I guess the one thing we can learn from all this, no one has a clue. But what really strikes me about all of this, we've got the government saying, you know, we're doing a fantastic job, that, you know, we're taking this all really seriously. Why then, when a known double agent, former Russian spy, was found with his daughter frothing at the mouth on a park bench in rural England with his daughter beside him, didn't an alarm bell go off? Why didn't someone say, you know, maybe we should actually get someone in, this may be a poisoning? I mean, it just took days, didn't it? It took days. It was something like 5 days before they got the army in to even take that ambulance away that he was carried to the hospital in. It just seems insane.
And in terms of the political response, 2 big front-page stories, one the Sunday Times, one the Telegraph. The Sunday Times focusing on all the money, as I was saying, going into the Conservative Party's coffers from prominent Russians.
Yeah, you get a very different impression of the government's response to Salisbury if you read either of these papers. The Sunday Telegraph basically saying that they're going to, you know, make it harder for people to get visas with the Magnitsky Act that you were talking about. Although, frankly, if someone's guilty of an extrajudicial murder, you'd like to think that it would be quite difficult to get visas. But yeah, the Sunday Times, totally different approach to this. This is about the government's links to Russian oligarchs and the amount of money that has been given to the Conservative Party in particular. When Theresa May first came into power, aides said that she would sup with a long spoon when it came to Moscow. Well, it turns out that the long spoon was quite effective at getting quite a lot of money in, £826,000 from Russian-linked supporters since July 2016.
At this stage, we should say we have no proven link to the Kremlin. This is all supposition.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just kind of trying to...
nice Russians, aren't they? They're very nice Russian billionaires that are here.
There are plenty of nice Russians. The Sunday Times is clearly linking this to the Salisbury thing in some ways, because they have quotes in here where they have cabinet ministers privately accusing the Prime Minister of a limp response. And apparently people were furious when she slapped down Boris Johnson in a cabinet meeting for saying Russia was responsible for the poisoning. I wonder who briefed that.
Well, she actually also said this week, didn't she, that when we find out who's responsible for this, there will be serious repercussions. It took them nearly 10 years to get I can never pronounce his name. Litvinenko. And, you know, by that time, they're planning to ban going to the World Cup. We'll have played in Russia, we'll have played in Qatar before they've even decided if it's state-funded. And as you say,
but we're not sending a junior minister. That will scare them. That will scare them. OK, next story, please, chaps.
OK, what are we on? Oh,
OK, the Sun. Yeah. Oh, yes, the Sun.
We want to talk about the Sun. We want to talk about, as you have Philip Hammond on today.
A really important interview in the Sun, but they didn't put it on the front page.
Oh, look, it's very mean of them. They didn't put it on the front page. They did put it a little bit on page 2. But he's here to give us great news Austerity's over, the light is shining again, and he's also, one thing I do like, is he's given a big plug for tackling the scourge of plastic. But I think other people might be worried about...
When you read through his piece, what he's saying is unemployment's down, wages are up nearly 3%.
Manufacturing's up.
Manufacturing's up.
Yeah.
We've had 2 quarters now in which we're paying off the debt day to day. You know, the so-called end of austerity. It's a very, very sunlit uplands message.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Philip Hammond has us walking into the light, although 2 things we can be sure of. Well, one thing we can be sure of, he's not going to switch the light on Tuesday, because if expectation management is to be believed, he's going to do hardly anything at all when it comes to the spring statement. But also, before the light, quite a lot of darkness. This story here in The Observer about millions of families basically facing the deepest benefit cuts in years. These are things that have already been announced but are coming into action this year, and they're going to hit 11 million families, many of them the just about managing group that the government says it wants to help. And I do think you have to be careful with the language you use around austerity. More than one politician has got in trouble previously for suggesting that we're about to start prancing into the sunny.
Absolutely.
I don't think he's going to be all that prancing today, do you? I think it'll be more...
We'll be watching and hoping for a bit of prance.
I would like some prance.
Now, great cartoon on the big story of the week, really.
It's a hugely important story that Donald Trump tweeted that he's going to meet up with the North Korean leader. And you don't often get a story completely encapsulated in one cartoon. The short, fat, maniac rocket man, I believe, says Trump. The old mentally deranged dotard, I presume, with a nice nuclear warhead there.
And we should say this is a very, very clever take on a famous cartoon by David Lowe. He was the great wartime cartoonist, and that was originally the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between Stalin. That was Hitler, that was Stalin. And it's a very, very clever, beautifully drawn and very accurate take on one of the world's most famous cartoons. So
I think he's showing off, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to say any more about that.
And then this is back to domestic politics, but I love this. You know when you use WhatsApp and you think that it's really quite private?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that it doesn't always work that way. This is a massive leak to BuzzFeed of the WhatsApp messages between the European Research Group, which is essentially the Tories' backbench Brexiteers. And it starts off with their response when Anna Soubry, ardent Remainer, essentially said that Theresa May should fling them out of the party. And I love this. Ian Duncan Smith, former leader, you can just imagine his tone on this, comes in. My suggestion is that colleagues should not engage in this. Although immediately they engage. We have a message here from Anne Main, the MP for St Albans, who basically says she wants a badge with 35 stars, which is the number that Anna Soubry said there were of Brexiteers, a pair of swivel eyes, and I shall wear it with pride. And then a few minutes later, she added, stay focused, we march on to win. And don't forget, they're not a big fan of Philip Hammond. They actually repeatedly call him Philly No Mates.
Very, very mean. But this is what this is one of those what they are really thinking stories. They come onto programmes and they're very, very restrained in their language. Between themselves, they're furious.
Yeah, and they even have agreed to, lines that they're agreeing to take. And they're really furious about some of the things Theresa May has done, really furious about the idea that EU citizens will continue to have free movement during transition. It's really quite telling.
And as it's a Sunday morning, you're not reading out some of the more abusive bits that
swear words.
We're not having any of them.
So that's divisions on the Conservative side of the divide, but there's a lot of it as well about this titanic struggle going on in the Labour Party for the General Secretaryship with John Lansman, creator, I don't know if Momentum has leaders, but creator and co-leader of Momentum on the one side, and then the Unite candidate on the other, Jenny Formby. So it's unions versus the mass movement is the challenge facing the Labour Party. Yeah,
groups which you thought were on the same side. But, the leadership appears to be more backing the Unite candidate in this. But John Lansman clearly wanted to throw it open. I thought it was quite nice. He suggested that female members of the Labour Party should feel free to come forward and put their names forward. And now there's a kind of inspired by Lansman hashtag with loads of women applying for the role. So let's see where that goes.
It's a genuine, interesting problem for them in a sense, because the unions have always been at the heart of the Labour movement right from the start, and yet they've now got, I think, the most successful mass membership party in Europe, and they want to give those people some power.
And they're isolating them.
Well, that's what John Lansman's background to this is, that he believes that the members should have the power.
Politicians fighting like rats in sacks. No surprises.
There's a news story. OK, what next?
Do you want to do dogs?
Yes, let's do dogs.
I think
There's
on,
lots of
on a
pictures
Sunday
of
morning,
cute dogs.
it's just Crufts is on at the moment, and it's completely captivating. I mean, although when you see these wonderful animals just sort of, you know, running along with all their beautiful fur flying around, this is what the poor little guys look like beforehand. I mean, I wouldn't even do that to myself to get back my hair looking good. Would you?
Not.
No, indeed.
But it's worth the watch, and I think the final might even be tonight.
You've got a very interesting story there about a graduate suing, I think, Anushka.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So essentially, this graduate, who was from Hong Kong but is now living in London, came and applied for a degree at Anglia Ruskin University. And one of the promises in the prospectus was you're going to have massive opportunities for employment afterwards. Well, she has concluded that it was in fact a Mickey Mouse degree, and she doesn't have all those opportunities, and she's actually suing the university because, and this is the thing that's changing, students essentially are seeing themselves as customers now and saying, am I going to get what you are promising? If she was to win,
she's actually saying my degree wasn't tough enough.
it wasn't tough enough, and you know, there's a quite interesting bit here where she says the claim includes allegations that one lecturer arrived late for lessons, finished early, and occasionally simply told students to self-study. But
So
I thought universities were all about self-study.
Okay.
So there you go.
Just as we finish, it was International Women's Day, but today is Mother's Day.
This
Much
is
more
a wonderful
Mothering
day.
Sunday.
This is wonderful. Gary Oldman, you know, fresh from his Oscar win, he's with his mum on Mother's Day, and I think the lovely thing about him is he doesn't. It's not just that he goes on about his mum as he did in his speech. When he moved to America, he brought her over with him. The last few years when she got really frail, she now lives with him. That's the way to treat your mum. Did you remember to send your mum flowers?
I did. Thanks, Mum. I did. She got them. I know that, so I'm all right this year.
Time to stick